Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here. Today I'm back with another video. This time it's on Valeera. Valeera is essentially a World of Warcraft rogue, and she plays, feels, and sounds exactly like how I remember rogues sounding in World of Warcraft. And I think that's a really great design. When you play her, it really does feel like you're playing a rogue. So I have to hand it off to the Blizzard design team who kind of worked on Valeera. That being said, is she good? Does it work? Um, the answer to both of those questions is absolutely. She is a fantastic hero. She has gotten some criticism for being a little oppressive in quick match, and I'd probably agree with that. But there's also several other heroes who are really annoying to face in quick match, and I don't think quick match is an accurate portrayal of a hero in the game. So if you're actually drafting in um, your league or team league or whatever, then Lyra becomes a lot less overpowering because you can actually counter her. And there's a lot of unique effects for Valeera. So she's basically an assassin, and the closest hero in the game compared to Valeera is Zeratul. Now, there's going to be times when you want to pick Zeratul and times when you want to pick Valeera. I would say overall, Zeratul is probably the more reliable pick. He actually has a blink, so he can actually go over walls, and he can be a lot more nimble and precise in what he goes for. He also has Void Prison, which is a fantastic setup for your team. That being said, Valeera actually works better as a team player. Zeratul is more of kind of a solo flanking hero. He can split push, he can wave clear, but Valeera actually has a lot of CC in her kit, which is really good if you're playing with your allies. So she has stuns and she has silences, and that's pretty unique for a kind of stealthy roguelike character, at least for Heroes of the Storm. So Valeera is a great hero, but she can also be countered. So I don't think she's OP broken, but she's definitely a strong hero. Now, Valeera also has kind of unique effects for the way that she works mechanically. So although you can see the yellow bar here, it may look like Chen's brew, but she actually has an energy bar. So she has 100 energy and it replenishes at a rate of 10 per second. And she also has 3 combo point indicators here. So using an ability, using abilities will generate combo points, and then you can use your combo points to use Eviscerate, which is one of her abilities. So the more points you have, the more damage you deal. She doesn't have mana, obviously, so you'll never run out of mana. You'll never have to back. So your only kind of your only requirement resource is really health. So if you get healed, you never have to back, which is obvious, but I just thought I'd mention it. So let's go over her abilities first. Her Q is Sinister Strike. So you basically dash in a line. It uses 30 energy out of 100. So it's like her average energy use, and it damages all heroes or all enemies in a line. And if it hits a hero, the dash stops immediately, and the cooldown is reduced to 1 second from 5 seconds. So if I just use it on these ogres here, you see that I dash through them. However, if I use it on this hero here, you'll notice that the dash will stop. If I use it right beside, dash immediately stops and goes in a 1 second cooldown. Also generates 1 combo point. Her second ability is Blade Fury. So Blade Fury is basically just your standard press W, does AoE damage. It just looks like that. And if you hit a hero, it generates a combo point. And it generates 1 combo point per enemy hero hit, which is pretty important to note. So sometimes you might want to generate the most adequate amount of combo points, and you might want to use Blade Fury over Sinister Strike. So Sinister Strike has 30 less energy, but it does slightly less damage. So most of the time, if you're on a single target, you want to use Sinister Strike, and if you are on more than one target, you might want to use Blade Fury. Unless you're trying to assassinate a single target, then Sinister Strike is still your better option. Sinister Strike is also one of Valeera's key mobility abilities. Obviously, it's pretty much her only mobility, but she does have some other tricks. So it's a nice little getaway tool. And you can use it to juke abilities. So say if ETC is going to slide you, you can juke it or kind of get out some other abilities. It does not, however, go through terrain. So if I dash through this, it just goes around. Okay, her E ability, which I've kind of gone over a bit, is Eviscerate, and it uses 25 energy and consumes all combo points. The more combo points it consumes, up to 3, the more damage it deals. So pretty standard there. It also uses the least amount of energy of her 3 basic abilities, and it has basically no cooldown, 1 second cooldown. So you can use Eviscerate pretty much anytime you have 25 energy and you have combo points. I generally wouldn't recommend that you use Eviscerate unless you do have 3 combo points, which isn't hard to do, as you'll see. But I wouldn't really use it for 1 combo point unless you're just trying to burst a hero down. 1 combo point, it does less than Sinister Strike, so not really worth it. And now we get to the interesting part of Valeera. Her D allows you to activate Vanish, which has an 8 second cooldown, and you vanish from sight, becoming stealth and increasing movement speed by 10%. The first second that you are stealth, you are unrevealable, which means that any damage you take does not reveal you, and you are literally invisible. So that shimmer that shows some on like Zeratul and Nova does not exist for the first second that you vanish. You are completely invisible. And once you are activate Vanish, you have a set of new abilities. So I'll press it here. You can see that I have 3 new abilities. The first ability is Ambush. So you ambush the target and you just basically instantly deal damage. So you just press Q on a target and it does damage. Pretty straightforward. So I'll just show that here. That's all that is. And then for W, we have Cheap Shot. So you deal 66 damage, so it basically does no damage, and you stun them for 1.25 seconds. Isn't that the most iconic sound? That's probably the most iconic sound for me of all of World of Warcraft, that kind of Cheap Shot sound. And the third ability we have is Garrett. So Garrett an enemy, so you deal a little bit of damage instantly, and then deal a lot more damage over 7 seconds. It also silences them for 2.25 seconds. The silence is fairly long. It just looks like that. So, there are a few things we need to cover here. So the first one is, which opener do you use? So this depends on several things. It depends on where your team is. It depends on how low the enemy is. It depends on what talents you've taken, and it depends on what hero you're going on. So generally, I would never use ambush ever, unless you are trying to finish off a target. You'll notice that it is the Cheap Shot and Garrett cost 30 energy, while ambush only costs 10 energy. So it also does the most damage of these 3 abilities, but if you have an enemy stunned, you can do more damage while they're stunned, or if you have an enemy silenced, they'll take almost just as much damage here. It's slightly less damage overall. Of course, it's over 7 seconds, but they'll also be silenced, so you can get some more damage in while they can't retaliate. So ambush should only be used if you are finishing off a target, or you don't have enough energy, and you don't have enough energy to use one of the other abilities. However, that being said, once you put talents into it at levels 7 and 13, which we'll cover, then you pretty much only want to use ambush. At least most of the time you want to use ambush. So until it's talented, do not use ambush, at least for the build that we're going today. Otherwise, if you have Cheap Shot, you always want to open with Cheap Shot if you have other CC around you. So if you have, or even like a Chromie, so if you open with Cheap Shot, Chromie can combo, or KT can combo and stun, or you can set up for an ETC. So if you have allies around, you want to open up with Cheap Shot. Remember that you will always deal, even with talents and ambush, you will always deal more damage with Cheap Shot, because Cheap Shot enables your allies to follow up. You'll always deal more damage if you have allies around you. Then you should use Cheap Shot. At least as long as they're not like pure potatoes and they literally don't follow up. But if they have any kind of follow up whatsoever, even if they only get like 1, KT living bomb, that's going to do more damage than you would if you open up with ambush. So always open up with Cheap Shot if your allies are nearby and they're going to be able to follow up. You want to open up with Garrett if you want to trade. So Garrett's basically a trading ability. So if you open up on like a Li Ming, she's not going to be able to retaliate. If you're on a single target, and there's no one else around, you don't want to open up with ambush. You want to open up with Garrett, because you don't want to open up Cheap Shot. So Cheap Shot and Garrett are basically the same thing if you're opening up on like a Li Ming, except that Garrett's going to be a lot more effective. Because Li Ming isn't going to be able to teleport or blink anymore for 2.25 seconds instead of just being immobile for 1.25 seconds. So not only are you going to be able to get more damage in because she can't trade with you at all, Garrett also deals more damage. So when she's silenced, then you can get some damage in there as well. You can also use Garrett on heroes like Chen if he's drinking instead of Cheap Shot. You can use basically as long as the hero can't get away, you want to open up with Garrett instead of Cheap Shot. But if you want follow up from your allies, you generally want to open up with Cheap Shot. They also all generate 1 combo point. So the general combo that you want to do, at level 4, it's already going to change, but generally the combo you want to do is can depend on a few things, but you'd open up with like a Garrett and a Q, you W, and that would be some basic combo. So that's going to do a bit of quite a bit of chunk. And remember that Valeera doesn't have any mana costs, and her cooldowns are quite low, so you can just repeat that over and over again. The other thing I want to mention is do not just walk around the entire map stealth with Vanish. You don't want to just walk around stealth the entire map. Like you want to walk around unrevealed until you actually get near heroes. Also, you don't want to just stealth and then walk up to a hero and then open. What you want to do instead is especially if they're in a distance away from you. Like if you stealth in front of a hero, they're gonna hear the stealth sound and they're just gonna walk away from you, right? Instead, what you want to do is you want to Sinister Strike, and you can get within range. Do that too cleanly. So you can gap pose with Sinister and then go in. And you actually want to be using Vanish like in the middle of fights. Remember that you're completely unrevealable for that first second, so you need to get very good at using Vanish in the middle of fights. And as soon as it's up, you should be using Vanish if you're trying to kill a target, unless you're saving it for a getaway, because you will always do more damage with one of your openers, or you'll be more effective at least with one of your openers than you will with your basic abilities. You're basically pretty much almost always waiting for Vanish to come up when you're playing Valeera. It is by far her most important ability. And these 3 abilities here are actually like game changing versus Sinister Strike, Blade Fury, not the most effective. Even Eviscerate isn't all that effective. You're basically just setting up with one of these and then you can follow through with the rest. But if you don't get the setup, it can be you can get a reduced value from Valeera. Okay, so let's go over some talents. So Vigor, level 1, increases energy by 2 per second. So remember that you have 10 base energy, so it's going to increase it by 20%. Not the greatest energy increase. After collecting 20 globes, Valeera's maximum energy is increased to 120 from 100. So that's actually quite good. But it takes quite a long time to get 20 globes, especially if you're roaming and not in lane getting soak. So I wouldn't really recommend this talent. The next talent here is Subtlety. So after remaining vanished for at least 4 seconds, using any one of your openers causes Valeera to regenerate an additional 10 energy per second for 5 seconds. So basically you double your energy regeneration for 5 seconds. The problem with this, as I said, is that you're not actually stealthing around the map all the time. Like you shouldn't be stealth all the time. You shouldn't even be in stealth for more than 4 seconds. That's why they give you like this is an extremely strong talent if you could always get that 4 seconds off. But that's why they give it to you at level 1, because it seems really good, but it's actually in reality you don't actually get to stealth for 4 seconds most of the time, so you don't benefit from this. If you're stealthing around the map, you're probably playing Valeera wrong. Like you should not be stealthing from one end of the map to the other. You only stealth if you're getting near heroes or you need to get away or something. The next option is combat readiness. So each combo point spent grants a block charge for 50 physical armor against the next enemy hero hit. It stores up to 3 charges. So what this means is that basically every time you use Eviscerate, if you have 3 combo charges, you get 3 charges of block. And these charges last forever. So if you get any block charges on a hero in a trade, they will last until they are consumed. So this is actually what you should be getting most of the time. The only time I would recommend not getting this talent is if the enemy team has like Tychus, Zarya, Tracer, like things that'll just eat up your block charges, because combat readiness is actually by far the strongest talent here if you're against heroes that actually even remotely use block charges. So like if you're against like Zeratul or a Nova or a Vala or a Zul'jin or anything like that, it's going to be very effective. The last option here we have is Crippling Poison. So a 15-second cooldown, and Valeera, and when you activate it, Valeera's next instance of spell damage slows enemy movement speed by 25% for 5 seconds. So if your team, so if you're against a team that doesn't have you won't benefit from combat readiness, you can go Crippling Poison, and it's actually quite strong. It's only a 15-second cooldown. I'd recommend one of these two talents. So even though, you know, like if you look at Hot Slogs, Crippling Poison is rated pretty low. I actually think it's quite strong. If you feel like you're not really benefiting from combat readiness or crippling, you could still go Subtlety or Vigor. They're not bad talents, but you're not going to get as much benefit. You're not going to maximize them as much as you would the other two. But if you're not really if you feel like you're not getting value from block or you're never really using Crippling Poison, then you could benefit from these as well. But generally, I always go Combat Readiness. Level 4, we have Relentless Strikes, reduces the cooldown of signature strike by 10. Hemorrhage, basic attacks deal 25% additional damage to enemies affected by Garrett. Initiative, Ambush, Cheap Shot, and Garrett award 2 combo points instead of 1. And Wound Poison, when you activate it, Valeera's next instance of spell damage also reduces healing by the victim by 50%, healing received. So I wouldn't be getting Relentless Strikes here. The energy doesn't really matter. The thing I want to mention about Valeera's basic attacks is that she actually has one of the highest DPSs in the game for basic attacks. So although she only hits for 173, she attacks twice per second, so it's an incredibly high DPS. It's higher than Rag's auto attacks. It's higher than Brawl's auto attacks. The only one it's not really higher than is Greymane, who obviously has insanely high auto attack damage when he's in wolf form. And like Butcher, if he stacks up, and heroes like that will outdamage Valeera auto attack wise. But she has incredibly high auto attack damage. So even though she does have incredibly high auto attack damage, though, you wouldn't go Hemorrhage because you're not really going to be using her auto attacks that much. At least not as much to get value. Initiative is very good because instead of having to activate Vanish and then you open up with a combo here, Q, W, and then E, you can instead just open it up with whatever your combo is, Q, so you don't have to use your Blade Fairy, and that saves quite a bit of energy for if you want to use it at a different point. It also lets you burst a little bit faster. So initiative is what you should go most of the time. I would go Wound Poison if I mean Wound Poison is really good in more if you're playing with like a team or you have more setup on your team and you're really going after key targets. Wound Poisoning will get a lot of value. But generally, I would recommend that you just go Initiative. Level 7, we have Mutilate, Fatal Finesse, Slice and Dice, and Ambush. So Mutilate, you now strike with both blades. Basically, your Q does twice as much damage, but the range is reduced by 1. So you can see the range here. And if I get Mutilate, the range is shortened. I think it reduces the range, it says by 1, so I think it reduces from 2 to 1. It looks like half the distance. So you go half the distance, but it does twice as much damage. Which sounds good. Maybe it sounds good. I think it sounds good to me, but I still wouldn't go. You'll see why in a sec. Fatal Finesse, it's a quest talent, so once you hit 20 heroes of Blade Fury, you'll get 60 to increased damage and reduces the energy cost of Blade Fury by 20. So it halves the energy cost, but barely increases the damage. This used to be taken, and I had no idea why, so I'm thankful that people no longer take this because it just seems bad to me. You don't really need the extra energy, and the extra damage is so insignificant. Slice and Dice is an interesting talent. So eviscerating an enemy with 3 combo points causes Valeera's next 3 basic attacks to have their attack speed increased by 150.
Choose
so if we just go through like this really quickly,
yeah, that'll cause some damage.
You'll see that she attacks very quickly on that. So I'll use it here. She attacks 3 attacks very quickly, and they basically come off instantly. This basically gives you 3 attacks worth of damage, maybe 2.5, the way that works. And this is actually, I never see people taking this, but I actually think it's a viable talent. But the reason you never see people taking it is because Assassinate here is Ambush deals 100% additional damage if no other enemy heroes are within 4 range. So 4 range, if we assume that Valeera's Q here is 2 range, it's about over here. Stop attacking. It's about where my mouse is over here for the isolation effect. And the isolation effect is actually very strong. 100% additional damage means that it does more than twice the amount of damage as Garrett. And it does all burst damage as well. So incredibly effective.
Choose a talent.
And definitely what I'm going to recommend here at level 7. That being said, if you go Ambush at level 7, we'll cover it in a moment, you have to go Death from Above at level 13. If you go any other option here at level 13, do not get Assassinate at level 7. If you go, we'll cover them in a moment, but if you go Elusiveness, Blind, or Strangle at 13, you must go Slice and Dice at 7. So just to look at the damage here, it's going to do a 789 at level 20, which is quite a lot of burst damage. Level 10, we have her heroics. So we have Smoke Bomb and Cloak of Shadows. Smoke Bomb creates a cloud of smoke while in the smoke. Valeera is unrevealable, so you are literally invisible. And you can pass through other units, and you gain 25 armor. You reduce damage taken by 25%. Valeera can continue attacking using abilities without being revealed last 5 seconds. So this is incredibly useful, and it's basically like a get out of jail free card if you're being attacked. Not only does it reduce damage and let you do damage on top of that, it's basically 5 seconds that you can wait for Vanish to come up or your Signature Strike to come up. And that allows you to not only survive during Smoke Bomb, but also get away. Smoke Bomb is also very useful against burst damage, so sometimes you can use the 25% armor or damage resistance versus like a Chromie combo. If you get if she Time Warps you, you can cast it and then you'll take 25% less damage, or you can use it to reduce damage from KT or something, so it can be very useful there. Overall, it just looks like this. Then you are unrevealable, and you can attack and use abilities, but heroes can't see you. They will, however, get a notification that says unrevealable if they damage you, so they'll have an idea in the area of where you are, but they cannot directly attack you, so they can't cast any kind of targeted abilities. And if you like Q out and D at the same time, you can actually get out with 1 second of being unrevealed. And so if you like, go from here, you can get all the way to about over here without enemies seeing you, because you'll be unrevealed while you're vanishing as well.
Choose a
The other
talent.
option you have is Cloak of Shadows. So Cloak of Shadows is a 15-second cooldown. It develops you in a Cloak of Shadows, which immediately removes all damage over time effects. For 1.5 seconds, you become unstoppable, and you gain 75 spell armor. So this does a lot, and it's a quarter of the it has a quarter of the cooldown that Smoke Bomb does at 15 seconds. So it just looks like this, and for that 1.5 seconds, it removes damage over time effects. So like Gul'dan's E or Lunara's poison, stuff like that gets removed, and which isn't really that important. But if you want to stealth immediately, you can use Cloak of Shadows and then vanish, and then you won't have any effects on you. So the part that removes damage over time effects isn't that useful, but the next part is. So 1.5 seconds you become unstoppable. So this is useful for a lot of things, because it's a quarter of the cooldown. If you're going to get hit by an ability and you have your level 10s to deal with something, if you're going to hit by like ETC stun or Murden Stormbolt, and you're going to have to pop Smoke Bomb if you don't want to die. Like the enemy team is about to slide on you with ETC, and they're all going to follow up with damage with you, right? So then you pop Smoke Bomb just before you get slid, and although you don't die because they can't target you, you're still stuck there, and you just use a 60-second cooldown. Whereas if you use Cloak of Shadows and you get slid by an ETC, you just keep on running, and they can't follow up at all. So in a lot of situations, Cloak of Shadows would be a lot better than Smoke Bomb. That being said, Cloak of Shadows is a lot more difficult to use than Smoke Bomb, and it requires a lot of finesse. And sometimes Smoke Bomb will just be better. If you're in the middle of a fight and like a big team fight and you pop Smoke Bomb, you get a lot more effectiveness out of it than if you would Cloak of Shadows. Cloak of Shadows is more hit and run kind of style. The other part, reducing ability damage, can be really good versus like Kael'thas's Pyroblast or kind of big damage like that. It's really good versus Chromie. Or if you use it at specific times, it can be very good as well. Even versus like Tyrell Explosion, although you shouldn't need it because you can probably just Sinister Strike out. It has a multitude of uses. So overall, I'd recommend Smoke Bomb, but you can go Cloak of Shadows as well. Some situations it will be better if you know how to use it. At level 13, we have Elusiveness, Death from Above, Blind, and Strangle. So Elusiveness increases your movement speed by an additional 10%, so from 10% to 20%. Death from Above, Ambush now has a 7 range and teleports you behind the victim. Blind, when Cheap Shot expires, the victim is blinded for 2.5 seconds, and Strangle. Using Garrett on a hero reduces their spell power by 25% for 7 seconds. So all of these talents are very strong. It's probably her strongest talent tier, and her biggest spike, besides level 10, and of course 20. So Elusiveness is probably the weakest talent here, although it's still good. I wouldn't recommend going elusiveness. You're probably going to want to go either the blind or death from above. So death from above, it's extremely strong and is pretty much a big power spike, especially if you want to assassinate, which you should at level 7. So it can teleport you behind a victim. So if the enemy hero is pretty much all out of position, you can teleport behind them and instantly damage them. So if you use this, if you use Death from Above in combo with Eviscerate, and Sinister Strike, you can do like 2/3 of the damage, 2/3 of the health of like a Chromie or something, instantly without them having time to react. You can almost kill like a Vala. If any heroes at like half health and you can find them isolated, they will instantly die. This skull also indicates that the victim is isolated for ambush. So if the victim has a skull over the head, that means they are isolated. The other talent here that's really strong is blind. So when Sheep Shot expires, the victim is blinded for 2.5 seconds. So Sheep Shot is 1.25 seconds. So 1.25 seconds stun plus a 2.5 second blind, so 3.75 seconds of basically if you get it like on a Vala or a Zul'jin or any kind of auto attack reliant hero like Illidan, they can literally do nothing to you for 3.75 seconds. That is an extremely long time. And although I generally wouldn't recommend you take this in your average game, if you are with an experienced team that can follow up or you're going on key targets, blind here is extremely strong, and I would absolutely recommend you take it. I think it's extremely underrated as well. It is one of her strongest talents. It's if you get hit by it, it's just extremely overwhelming. Strangle is good if you use it on like a Li Ming or some kind of mage or something. But generally, you probably want to kill them with Death from Above, but it can be situational. Level 16, we have Seal Fate. Sinister Strike deals an additional 50% damage, and it generates an additional combo point when used against silenced, rooted, or stunned enemy heroes. Rupture, basic attacks increase the damage over time effects by Rupture by 5%, stacking up to 30%, so 30% more damage from Garrett, and it refreshes the duration of Garrett as well. Exposed armor, after you eviscerate a target with 3 combo points, they lose 25 armor for 2 seconds, so they take 25% more damage. And Thistletea, a 60-second cooldown that you can activate immediately to restore 100 energy and does not break Vanish. So here you're going to want to go Thistletea or Exposed Armor. Seal of Fate just generally isn't that great, and Rupture is just generally not that great as well. And also, if you're going Ambush at tiers 7 and 13, you're going for a burst build, so and you're going to be opening up with Ambush, so you won't be able to use the CC from for Rupture or Seal of Fate, so you won't be able to even benefit. Thistletea is generally better here, pretty much all the time. It's going to allow you to do more damage because it lets you generate energy, and you can just use more Sinister Strikes or Blade Furies. You're going to get more damage that way. It can also help you in a pinch if you just don't have the energy to kill a target. Exposed Armor is good if they have a lot of tanks and you're just not finding any value, but generally you go Thistletea. Level 20, we have some interesting choices. Adrenaline Rush here, while in Smoke Bomb, Valeera generates an additional 30 energy per second. Developing Shadows, when Valeera uses Vanish, she also gains Cloak of Shadows, so anytime you press D, you also gain Cloak of Shadows when you enter it. Night Slayer reduces the cooldown of Vanish by 3 seconds, so from 8 seconds to 5 seconds. And Cold Blood, a 45-second cooldown, you can activate to increase the damage of Valeera's next Eviscerate by 100%. So Adrenaline Rush, I just wouldn't recommend because one, it's not the style for this build. This build is more burst based. You're not going to stand and kind of you want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. Enveloping Shadow, I don't find that you generally need to use that you need Cloak of Shadows on Vanished. It's very rare that you actually benefit from that. Night Slayer is very strong, so reduces the cooldown to 5 seconds on Vanish, which is extremely powerful. You open up, it basically lets you vanish almost immediately after using a combo. And Cold Blood lets you burst targets exceptionally hard, especially when you have Ambush at level 7. You have Initiate for extra combo point and Eviscerate potential. You have Thistletea, which gives you more burst as well. So generally, if they have a lot of squishy heroes and you're able to get on them, you want to go Cold Blood. And if they don't, it's a little bit harder to kind of get on their backline. Then you want to go Night Slayer. So both of these are great options. Generally, I go Cold Blood. So a combo would pretty much just look like this. You can set up Eviscerate before, and then abilities in between. Obviously, I have cooldowns toggled there, but you can do quite a lot of burst damage. You can easily one-shot a Chromie or a Probius or any kind of hero like that. So last minute recap. Remember that you want to dash in and out of the fight with Valeera. Keep a very close eye on your energy. When you first start playing with Valeera, it's going to feel overwhelming, especially if you have the poisons at 1 and 4. You'll have like 4 things on your taskbar, which can be difficult to manage. Overall, you just want to activate them when you can. Take Smoke Bomb most of the time. Close to the Cloak of Shadows, if you get really experienced on Valeera, it can be really good. At 13, remember if you go Blind or Strangle or anything else, then you don't want to go Assassinate at level 7. You don't want to open up with Ambush. Even though you do go Ambush, build like at 7-13, you're gonna want to be opening up an ambush every single time, but it doesn't always mean it's the right thing to do. I know that once I hit 13, I kind of get in the trap of, okay, I have this ambush build, I need to open up with ambush, but that's not actually true. Early in the game, you'll always be using Cheap Shot and Garrett, then suddenly, like late game, you'll switch, and sometimes it's just not more effective to use ambush. It's not always the right choice to do it, even if it's on an isolated target. It might be better to use it on something else. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.